Hey guys, Steeble here. Today we're going to be going over the Tier 5 destroyers and evaluating them for the upcoming ranked season. If you haven't heard the news yet, ranked is imminent. I suspect it'll be out next Monday, but it could happen even sooner. They're counting down 3 days from yesterday, so 2 days from today. Something's going to happen. We don't know what, but I'm assuming the big update's going to be on Monday, and we'll get the patch notes on Friday. And if that's the case, I'll be sure to let you know what's coming down the pipe. But anyway, for ranked, I want to go over each class and kind of give my opinions as to the power rankings of those ships. And here we have a T-61 game on the screen. This is going to end up being my pick for Tier 5 cruisers, and this game should be a pretty good example of why. How I don't know yet. They haven't announced the exact parameters, but I suspect ranked is probably going to be 7v7 would be my guess. It's probably always going to be domination mode, and they did say on Reddit yesterday that it could, they kind of they hinted that it's going to be capped at the number per ship, or the number of ships per class, so could be 2 destroyers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, or some, any combo, whatever it is, but that's not official. That was just kind of hinted at. But anyway, that's going to be my parameters. That's what I'm going to assume ranked is going to be like until I know differently. That is going to affect my picks a little bit here. But going over destroyers today, T-61 I think is going to reign supreme at the Tier 5. Again, for these first season of ranked, it's going to be all Tier 5 ships. So it's not going to be Tier 5 V4 or anything like that. Everything's Tier 5, so you know kind of what you're getting into ahead of time. So I've never played ranked World of Warships. I assume the meta is going to kind of change over time, but my feeling is this first season, well, it's going to be season 1 and 2 coming up in the near term here, Tier 5 and then Tier 4. I think it's going to play pretty similarly to how your kind of random games play until probably the higher tiers, and then it might become a little bit more strategically based. But I think destroyers are going to have to really focus on 3 things. Number 1, spotting and keeping the enemy targets lit, and then staying alive throughout the match. I think spotting is going to be the most important destroyer role overall. You need to keep those targets lit for your support ships to, help delete them. Especially any cruisers or something that are positioned behind cover. They're going to definitely need you to be able to spot throughout the match. Destroyers need to be able to stay alive during these matches, and that's going to mean you're going to have to play a little bit less aggressively, at least with an eye on, keeping yourself alive throughout the entirety of the match. Number 2, hunting other destroyers. I think that's going to be an important part, but again, I don't think we're going to want to be doing that too aggressively to start. But the destroyer's kind of main target has to be the enemy destroyers first, and once the enemy's ability to, have eyes on the battlefield is eliminated, then you can go after those other targets, particularly battleships, for your torpedo strikes. But again, I think the ability to fight other destroyers is going to be important, or at least, stay away. If you're going to engage with them, like if you're going to play a Japanese destroyer, for instance, maybe you're not going to be as focused on hunting other destroyers. But in general, I think whichever team loses their destroyers first is probably going to have a hard time winning in these ranked battles. And then your third kind of goal is going to be contesting, scouting, and capturing objectives. And certain destroyers are going to be better than others at performing that. So that's kind of the main 3 criteria I'm looking at when I'm going to rank these ships here. T-61 in my mind comes out on top. I think it's the best Tier 5 destroyer in the game for capture the base mode, for domination mode, and what I presume ranked is going to be. I think it's just a very strong ship, and I think I recommended it pretty heavily when it came out. And the more I've played it, the more impressed I am with it. Now, I run a 16-point Bay, who I leveled up aggressively because I want to ban all my destroyer builds throughout the nations of the game. So I have it kind of more set up as a gunboat than a lot of players that I've talked to, at least. A lot of players are running Von Spee on this one, and going, really focusing hard on the torpedoes and trying to be a stealth torpedo boat. That's fine. I think that could work pretty well. I go with Bay over Von Spee personally just because, again, I have him very high level incidentally, and I got other stuff to do with my other promotion orders, so I don't want to promote two commanders for the same line when I think Bay does a very fine job anyways. So I'll keep that in mind. But the T-61, I mean, you have the best detection. You got quick reloading torps. You got 68 seconds on my builds. Again, that's running Bay, not Von Spee. And that's second behind Fubuki at 62.4, again on my build. So very quick reloading, and perhaps with Von Spee it's even quicker. But even preserving the strength of guns by using Bay and putting some of the perks into the guns, you still have outstanding torps on this weapons platform. So T-61 I think is going to be very strong, and I put it number 1 for that reason. Next up, the Fubuki. The Fubuki I think is going to be a pretty solid ship. Its strengths, obviously, it's a very strong torpedo boat platform, very stealthy. A lot of offensive potential, at least against non-destroyer targets, which I think will be a good component of a lot of ranked teams. It does lose out on, the preferred qualifications of being able to really aggressively contest caps and being able to engage enemy destroyers, but the ability to constantly pump out these torpedoes and do it from a good bit of stealth it's a strong destroyer in my opinion, and I think people that play the Japanese destroyers a lot anyways should have a fair amount of success with the Fubuki in ranked mode. Again, you're going to have to kind of balance it. You're going to have to figure out if you have a real high level build, maybe a double concealment, then the Fubuki could potentially scout the enemy destroyers and then hold off on engaging them until they get weakened and maybe help them off there. But you're going to want to be careful, being too aggressive with the Fubuki. It's going to be more of a balancing act. You're going to really want to focus on the spotting with the ship and then launching those torpedo salvos, being in position to do so on reload, and then just maximizing the potential damage you could do through those torps. So I think the Fubuki will be a strong pick, but again, it's not really... If you had a team that only had Fubukis, you'd be at a disadvantage because you're going to need some ships to be able to contest caps and deal with the enemy destroyers as well. Next up on my list, I got the Mahan on there. The Mahan's going to have a problem because it has the highest detectability out of all these destroyers, so you're going to want to play with that in mind. You don't want to be pushing too aggressively when you're hunting those destroyers or contesting the caps until you are reasonably certain that you can do so without being focused on the supporting ships. But one-on-one against enemy destroyers, the Mahan's guns, very strong, and you're kind of there to eliminate the enemy destroyers. And you need to be cognizant of going against destroyers with sonar, i.e. the Icarus and the Gaidi and the T-61. And, don't be pushing them too aggressively. If they're able to spot you through use of their sonar and you're not able to spot them for a significant amount of time, that can potentially lead to your demise. So you do need to be able to work with the American destroyer playstyle, but if you're good at that class of ship in the regular game, I think that will translate over pretty well to ranked. Mahan, out of the tech tree USN destroyers, is probably my least favorite one. It could just because I don't play it as much as a lot of the other ones. I play the Farragut once in a while when the challenges call for like Citadels or whatever, and then the Benson, Kidd, and Fletcher. I really enjoy those, so I'm more familiar with those ones. So maybe my opinion of this ship is a little bit biased just due to atrophy, but it's not, in my opinion, the strongest USN destroyer. It doesn't have the ability to stealth torp yet. It's kind of the last tech tree ship that lacks that ability. So that's preventing it from being much higher on this list because, again, the ability to contest caps and the ability to fight other destroyers is very high. Spotting, you can do so if you do so carefully. But again, your detectability is going to be a little bit lower than the enemy team. So it can do a lot of good things to help your team. Now, I don't know if the player base is going to be experienced enough to properly use smokes in these ranked competitions yet, or ranked battles. But the USN destroyers have very strong smokes, and if you're maybe at the higher tiers, players will understand better. But if you're able to deploy this 2-minute smoke that has a huge plume, and then you get a cruiser or two that can stealth fire in the smoke, that's going to be a very powerful advantage. So players that understand both cruisers and destroyers that happen to be playing together will be able to utilize the USN smoke too. So if you're able to use that properly, I think that could boost the potential of the Mayhem. But again, just in general, I don't think a lot of players really understand that smoking up cruisers concept. At least I don't see it too often out there. Next up on my list, I got the Gaidi. The Gaidi does have sonar. It's pretty good in my opinion on contesting caps. This ship might go a little bit higher if you really prefer the German destroyers. You got a lot of experience with them. I'm not in love with the ship. I don't think it can. It's not the strongest at fighting destroyers, and it's not a bad ship, I guess I should say, but just in terms of the 3 in front of them, I don't think it should be listed in front of them. But again, you can potentially be using that sonar smoke combo to deal with other destroyers. If you're good at that play, you could be potentially a bit of a menace. But in terms of, if you do have the T61 is just far superior in my opinion, pretty much across the board than the Gaidi, so that one might have bumped it down a little bit. I got Icarus last on the list here. It's got an extremely long torpedo reload. I think it's a minute 40 or so on my builds. Maybe you can work on that with your builds and focus on it more than I do. But in terms of torpedo boat, I don't think it's great. Detectability, not great. It's the last kind of ship in the British destroyer line, in my opinion, where everything's okay, but it's nothing really special. It does have the single-use 6-pack of smokes, which could be interesting if a really experienced British destroyer player is able to use those in conjunction with a team. That'd be interesting to see. But in terms of just my feel for these ships, I just don't think the Icarus is the strongest out of the pack. That being said, I think all Tier 5 destroyers are good ships, and if you happen to prefer one that you play with a lot in the normal game modes, I'm not trying to dissuade you from playing that. Considerations such as who your most leveled up commander is and what access you have to that might play into which ship you want to play. I'm probably going to play the T61 when I'm playing destroyers anyways, but because I do have Bay maxed, again, due to the fact that I was using them as an inspiration a lot, that boosts it up even further in my mind. So if certain builds are really built out in your Navy more than others, that could potentially affect which ship you're going to want to choose too. All in all, this early kind of ranked session, again, without knowing the exact rules, I think destroyers are going to be extremely important to this. And again, I think whoever loses the destroyers first is probably going to lose the match in most instances. We'll see how it ends up playing out, presumably next week. But I'm looking forward to it. Again, this is all just my opinion. Take it with whatever grain of salt you want to. And I do want to hear what you guys are thinking about ranking the destroyers and stuff. I'll try and do these videos for the other 2 classes as well. That's it for this one. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Questions, leave them below, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.